I wanted to put together a quick video about Exchange native data protection and basically just define specifically what it means to use Exchange native data protection. So one of the first things we want to do is determine what it is we're attempting to protect. And of course that's the data that exists on our servers, but what are we trying to protect against? The first and most obvious case that we look towards when we think about protecting our data would be what happens in the event of a disaster. In the event that we lose a data center, we lose a server. Other concerns we have would be when users accidentally delete data, or we just want to store it for a long time. One of the more common methods for achieving the goal of protecting this data that seemed to suit these needs the best was the backup tape. Backup tapes were used for a very long time. We were able to offload large amounts of data to storage that didn't exist on the server and was significantly cheaper. Obviously, issues with tape reliability, especially spread across large data sets, presented issues with the recovery of data. Other issues arose, such as where would we store this data and how many tapes would we need for these purposes. To get around a lot of the limitations involved in backing up to tape, organizations started to look towards other mediums, such as backing up directly to disk, which allowed for quicker data recovery and provided a more robust and reliable backup target. Unfortunately, tape and tape backups didn't necessarily go away. Many organizations continued to rely on them for longer-term data storage. One of the biggest drawbacks to backing up in either situation, whether it be direct to disk or to backup tape, is the requirement that an organization maintain versions of the software compatible with the restore capabilities of the backup and restore mechanism. Exchange native data protection is intended to be a way to accomplish each of these goals without having to utilize any third-party backup solutions or additional backup and restore targets. When it comes specifically to long-term data storage requirements or the recovery of accidentally deleted items, Exchange provides a number of mechanisms that are intended to accomplish this without having to resort to recovering from any sort of backup whatsoever. In-place archiving, in-place e-discovery, in-place hold, litigation hold, single item recovery, and the recoverable items folder are all mechanisms that, when combined, can be used to eliminate the need to recover accidentally deleted items or store long-term data on external sources such as tape or disk. This leaves one final aspect of data protection, and it's arguably the most important, which is disaster recovery. One of the most common mechanisms to prevent against a disaster is to replicate data from one drive or server to another. There are various reasons for choosing one replication type over another, but when it comes to Exchange, the application-based replication is the clear best choice because you're not going to be faced with situations where you might need to recover cold or offline data. This is just going to prevent problems with Exchange databases in the future. Almost every organization that's looking to replicate Exchange data is doing so using Exchange's built-in database availability groups. A database availability group can be used to replicate data within a site or to one or more separate disaster recovery sites. The design is going to be based in every instance on the needs of the organization. Another mechanism that is so commonly used in environments these days that it's oftentimes almost considered a de facto portion of the environment is going to be the use of RAID to protect disks. As you're most likely well aware, the various versions of RAID involve copying the data from one disk to one or more disks depending on the RAID configuration you choose. This allows for a disk failure in your environment without noticing any sort of downtime on that particular disk array. Because the use of RAID is so prolific in environments and does such a good job of keeping data online, it can seem almost counterintuitive to consider another option. Exchange's native data protection does not require the use of RAID disks. And the thinking behind this is that if you're already using a database availability group properly by having 4 copies of that data, then Exchange's failover and switchover capabilities will automatically allow for the loss of a disk and a switchover to a new database in the database availability group. So we've covered how Exchange's native data protection can help us recover from disasters, accidental deletions, and help us accommodate long-term storage policies. One thing we haven't covered would be the replication of corrupted data. This isn't a common occurrence, but it can occur, and there needs to be a way to recover from it. The exchange mechanism utilized in this instance would be a lagged database copy. Simply put, this is a database that is lagging behind the other database copies when it comes to replication, so that if you do experience some form of internal logical corruption of that database, you're able to utilize this lagged database copy to recover to a recent period in time prior to any logical corruption. By preventing against even logical corruption and combining this with the other mechanisms previously mentioned, you can see that Exchange's native data protection can be an excellent way to achieve the goals of your environment without having to involve any third-party mechanisms whatsoever. However, the requirements of this configuration do require a robust configuration of database availability groups and servers. If you build your environment as close as possible to the preferred architecture as laid out by Microsoft, you can be confident that your data will be protected for any scenario you may run across. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't continue to use legacy backup options. However, it does allow you to consider not implementing these technologies should you choose to do so. Of course, there are some drawbacks to using Exchange native data protection. I've listed them out here. The main points are there are going to be some technological hurdles that will need to be implemented. Additionally, because many of the long-term recoverability options available to Exchange will require that your data is left on the servers themselves, there may be additional disk requirements for the database drives themselves. One thing of note is that there is no ability to recover accidentally deleted folders. Individual items contained within these folders can be recovered, but folder context is not maintained in the event that entire folders were deleted. Lagged copies can be converted to a non-lagged active copy. However, if you choose to do this, you need to realize that your now active lagged database copy is no longer lagged, and you may be open to logical corruption, so it would be in your best interest to create another lagged copy if you were to find yourself in this situation. The technical requirements of implementing Exchange native data protection does require that the IT team maintain an overall awareness of these features and understand how to use them. I hope you found this information useful, and I hope that it goes a long ways towards helping you make a decision as it pertains to protecting your Exchange data. Thanks.